What happens when you stop fearing failure? The issue with the fear of failure is the way in which we perceive it. We see failure as something that we should fear and avoid. But this is the wrong perspective to have. What we fail to understand about failure is its importance and necessity in the process of life. Do you remember the first time you learned to ride a bike or drive a car and you thought, I'm never going to get the hang of this? And then eventually, over time, you sort of figured out and got the hang of it. You failed multiple times, although you weren't considering it as failing, until you got the hang of it. You had somebody in the front seat with the brake pedal as well, just in case you made a mistake. And you failed and you failed and you failed up until you got there. Most of life is just like this experience. But as we grow older, we sort of forget this, right? We are paralyzed by the concept of fear. You know what fear is? To define fear is the anticipation of the occurrence of the worst case scenario. We fear things, right? Deep down inside. We fear things because we think everything ultimately leads to death. Think about it. We define fear as the anticipation of the occurrence of the worst case scenario. What is the worst case scenario in life in general? Death. Death, right? Death case is the worst case scenario, but it's the most inevitable one. And it's what gives life purpose. So the second you learn to accept that, you alleviate fear in general. However, let's say people don't even reach that stage and they want to just learn to get over the fear of failure in general. Let's just stick with that, right? What you fail to see fear as a necessary process of life. Anything you start, you're going to be shit at. And the honest reason why you fear to fail is you want to get it right the first time. You're a bit of a perfectionist. You want to be perfect in your first attempt just to avoid failure. But what we went wrong was in our childhood, we were programmed and trained to be rewarded on our ability to achieve and attain things. And we've sort of adopted this into our adult life. Sometimes our parents gave us love based on whether we're able to attain achievements. If we failed, it means they'll subtract, they wouldn't give us as much love. Yeah? They'll withdraw emotions. It allowed us to be hyper dependent on this concept of getting things right and succeeding. Now, we must learn to heal that version of ourselves and understand that is simply not how life works. And you can heal yourself by simply understanding this. It's not about getting it right. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's about giving things a shot. That's what it is about. Immediate kids around us, whether they be our cousins, our siblings, our nieces and nephews, which we can teach them, is the fact that it's not about getting things right the first time. It's about making an effort and trying. So if you can reward a kid on making an effort and trying, they'll eventually grow old and not fear failure. Because then they don't have an attachment to the perfect outcome. But they'll try things that they desire to do. Now, we understand where your fear of failure comes from. Here's what you must understand. Failure is a necessary part. The problem is you fear it and you avoid it when you're meant to actually be looking forward to it. It is an important feedback loop on how to overcome an obstacle inevitably encounter. So here's the problem. You want to get things right the first time. You want to be perfect in your first attempt. But if you're perfect in your first attempt, then that's considered a fluke. It's by luck. You must fail. It is necessary. It is part of the process. When you fail, you know what not to do the next time you do it. So when we look forward to failure as a necessary part of giving us information that we were absent of before, then we reposition how we see failure and we no longer fear it and we welcome it, and will eventually, inevitably lead to our success. Most times we stop at an obstacle, right? Thinking that we cannot overcome it. How many times have we even had an idea? We haven't even acted on it. Purely on a paralyzing fear of failure. What is there to fear? Really? What is there to fear? Getting something wrong? This is not school anymore. Life will not punish you, for getting something wrong. You might lose some resources. You might lose time, but it's a necessary feedback loop. You want to do something so much that you know every single route that it could go wrong, so that you inevitably have a winning streak, right? So you inevitably can never go wrong. See how important and necessary failure is? So removing your perfectionism, what causes procrastination, is the subconscious belief of a fear of failure. A subconscious belief of a fear of failure. That's what causes us to procrastinate. But when we look forward to failing, we look forward to running into obstacles and figuring out how to overcome them, our reality changes, because then when we no longer fear failure and we see it as a necessary part of the process, and we can do the work freely without any friction, which will ultimately only ever lead to our success. You must change your relationship which you have with failure. It is not something to avoid, but something to look forward to. You are not failing. You never fail. You can never really take an L in this life. And even if you take an L in this life, it's not a loss. It's a lesson in disguise. Right? The word loss was made out of a person who wanted to project an insecurity onto you. So you can never fail if you never stop trying. So there isn't an L in this life that isn't simply a lesson in disguise. So when you come across an obstacle or things don't go the way that you want it, try look for the lesson within that. And when you find the lesson within that, now you've gained more experience than you had before. The idea is not to be perfect in your first attempt, but to fail so much that you know every single way that you could ever possibly fail, so that you are set up and programmed for success in the future. So change the way in which you see failure and actually look forward to it and see it as a necessary process into self-mastery or mastering the craft in which you desire to do. It's been your boy KPOV. Thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Peace.